Life works best with Jesus. We believe it. It's our number one core value. It's not better. It's not just good. It's not average or even above average. Life works best with Jesus. It's a foundational piece that really changes how we think about life, how we go through life. Life works best with Jesus. But in order for it to be more than just a cool t-shirt saying, it has to make a difference. It has to be lived out. It needs to be lived out for some reason, when I stand up here, it doesn't click for me anymore. So you're going to have to just follow me here. Our second one is we bring families and kids closer to Jesus. When we talk about bringing families and kids closer to Jesus, we believe that not only does life work best with Jesus, not only does life change when Jesus comes into the picture, but we also believe that message is not just for me. It's for the families I interact with and the children who are part of my circle, whether they're my own children or the children in my neighborhood. We've actually put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, with that in how we staff and in how we program and in how we organize things here around the church. We bring families and kids closer to Jesus, littlest of little to the oldest of the old and everywhere in between. We want everybody to know Jesus because we know that life works best with Jesus. But then we also understand that sometimes people come into our lives who we've never met before. And to us, they're strangers. They're distant at best. They're strangers. And we believe that the gospel has this capacity of converting strangers into family. People who otherwise we never would have met, but had it not been for the gospel, we would remain strangers. But now, because we know Jesus and we understand what Jesus has done, that stranger now becomes part of our family. I look at some of you, and had I not received a position here at this church, had I not come here because of the gospel, you would have all been strangers to me. But because of that message of the gospel, we who once were strangers are now like family. And our fourth value is we share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods. As we said at the outset of the service, we share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods because we understand that we all live in a variety of different places, and there are people where we live, work, and play that are our neighbors. Won't you please won't you be my neighbor? See, some of you knew where I was going. Some others of you are like, I have no idea. And those of you are still in grade school. It's okay. I was very, very happy when nobody was able to, none of them knew the Mr. Rogers illustration because I thought that I was the only one who can feel old up here, but she even felt old, so that was, yes, love it. All of our values are grounded in Scripture, and this one's no different. We share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods. We believe it comes right out of this passage from Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5 is part of the Sermon on the Mount, and here Jesus says, you are the light of the world. Notice what he says, you are the light of the world. This isn't one of the disciples talking to Jesus. This is Jesus talking to his disciples and talking to the people who would follow him, and he says, you are the light of the world. Now we don't have this ability in English, in our English language, to see that the word you is plural. Right? We don't have a plural word you. It's you or you. Unless you're from down south and they say y'all. Or you're from West Virginia and they say you'ans. So it's either y'all or all y'all or youans are the light of the world. You plural, every single one of you are the light of the world. Collectively, we are the light of the world. I'm reminded of that camp song, right? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, hide it under a bushel. No! They never let me lead camp songs because I did it like that, right? And because I can't sing. But when you get a flashlight, you like cover the flashlight. What good does it do? Every night, when it's dark outside, I take my dog out for one last walk at night, and I take a flashlight because, well, where we live, you could be surprised by any number of things. Raccoons, not too bad. Possums, not terrible. Skunks. you want to see them a little bit further away. The coyotes and the foxes, they're another one I got to kind of worry about. So I take my flashlight out when I walk my dog. Now, I've never walked outside with my flashlight and then put duct tape on the end of it so that the light never shone through. But I think a lot of us are kind of like this, like you are the light of the world covered by duct tape. You are the light of the world hiding under a bushel. And if you would just go back to camp, you would realize, no, that's not right. But he goes on and he says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. They didn't have street lamps, right? So they didn't have lamps lining the streets so you knew where you were going. They had cities that would be on hills, and those cities on hills would have lights that would shine. And you would know where you were going by looking at some of the lights that were shining down off of some of these hills. And as you saw a light, you would know that's the direction I need to go. So you're a city set on a hill. Maybe a better illustration for you and I today would be a lighthouse on the shore. It's the same premise. This light has to shine so everybody sees where safety is. Then he goes on, he goes, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. No. But go back to camp for a second. Hide it under a bushel. No. Okay, never mind. Nobody's really getting into it like I am, so it's okay. Just sympathy laugh would be great every once in a while. But on the stand, right? They put it on a stand. No one hides it under a basket. No one hides it under anything. They put it on a stand. Now, the interesting thing here is they didn't have electricity the way we do. Their houses weren't illuminated by bulbs all over the house, but they would rather have one strategically placed lamp that was placed on a stand that would reflect off of the architectural elements in the building so they could see through virtually the entire home. And so what Jesus says here is, you are a light of the world. You are. I'm not commanding you to be. You are the light of the world. Now, what you do with that light is totally up to you. You are the light of the world. And I think we have a lot of covert lights in the world, which that's an oxymoron, but that's a whole other story. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but rather on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, he says, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Your light, the light that God called you to shine, is for his glory and for the benefit of your neighbor. And when we don't shine that light, God doesn't get the glory, and our neighbor doesn't get the benefit. And we rob the world of this light that it so desperately needs. So, our value is we share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods. Now, in order to get us to this and help us understand this just a little bit better and why sharing Jesus' love is so important, I want to go to the book of Philemon. If you know anything about the book of Philemon, it is a huge book in the New Testament, one whole chapter. And it's a story about a man named Philemon and his servant Onesimus. Right? And so here we have this story, and I'm going to go in the Derek version of how this whole thing came about, which may or may not be accurate, but this part doesn't matter. The letter is important. So imagine for a minute, Paul is doing his missionary journeys, and he meets this man named Onesimus. Onesimus was a runaway slave, a slave who was part of Philemon's household who ran away. And he meets up with Paul, and Paul's preaching, and he's talking about the gospel of Jesus. And Onesimus has this curious look on his face. And Paul's like, Onesimus, has Philemon never told you about Jesus? And imagine for a minute, if you will, that Onesimus looks at Paul and says, no, I just clean his house and I take care of the property. But I've never really talked to him about this. So then Paul writes a letter. And he writes this letter to Philemon, and he says, Dear Philemon, I thank my God every time I remember you. And then in verse 4, he says, I pray that the sharing of your faith may become effective for the full knowledge of every good thing that is in us for the sake of Christ Jesus. See what Paul does? Paul says, hey, Philemon, you say you understand the gospel. Philemon, you've communicated the fact that you are a believer in Jesus, that the resurrection is important to you. You've said that. You've got the necklace, you've got the tattoo, you've got the t-shirt. Like you went to the concert and waved your hands twice, and you bought a t-shirt afterwards. You obviously are a Jesus follower. But have you ever told anybody? Paul says, hey, Philemon, I pray that the sharing of your faith would have an effect on you that you would fully understand what you say you believe. In other words, he says, hey, Philemon, I see that you've become this covert disciple, this undercover agent for Jesus. And Jesus doesn't want them. There's no CIA in heaven. And that's not a political statement. That's just the reality. There's no hidden disciples. So if the world around you don't know you're a disciple, you're doing it wrong. So Paul says. Paul says if you really want to understand the gospel, the only way to truly understand the gospel is to tell somebody the gospel you believe. The only way to fully understand what Jesus did for you is to tell somebody else, because the sharing of your faith is going to have the effect that you'll have the full knowledge. But so often we treat our faith lives like it's some undercover operation. What will they think of me? Or better yet, I don't know what to say. And so here, in my seat as pastor, I get a lot of things, right? We've done like evangelism classes and faith sharing classes and how to build a testimony class. And we go through the whole Bible thing and we tell you about Jesus and how Jesus tells us to tell our neighbors. And you know what I hear? Like, I can't do that. I don't know what to say. I mean, what if they ask me a question I can't answer? Well, Paul answers it for you. He says, you want to know the answer? You got to tell them first. Because like you're never going to know the answer if nobody asks you a question. One of the very first things I ask everybody, like everybody who I bring on staff here, anybody in a leadership position around here, is what's the last thing you failed at? One of the first questions I asked Molly when we brought her on staff was, what's the last thing you failed at? I've asked that question before, and some people look at me like, what do you mean? I don't talk about my failures. Oh, I do. Oh, people. I fail all the time. Like, I am a failure with a capital F. I fail fast, but I don't ever want to fail fatally. And so if we don't know where we failed, we'll never learn anything. And so here Paul says, hey, Philemon, you don't even give yourself a chance to fail at sharing the gospel because you're not doing it. So I pray that you would start sharing your faith so that you would understand what you believe, because until you share it, you'll never really get it. Do you see what he's saying? He's saying, you don't share your faith because you don't think you know enough, but you'll never know enough until you share your faith. What a powerful thing it is. Now don't just take Paul's word for it here, but there's others as well. There's other instances where this happens. Throughout the Bible, you see this emphasis on one more. One more. Like, look how many times in the Bible just one more happens. Just one more. So you'll see it with Peter and Andrew. It was working so well for a hot second. There it is. John chapter 1, verse 41. Jesus is doing his thing, and he talks to Peter and Andrew. He talks to Andrew, and he tells him who he is, and Andrew realizes that this is the Messiah. And right away, Andrew goes and he finds his brother, his own brother, Simon, who we know as Peter. And he said, we found him. We found the Messiah. You know what Andrew did when he first found out about the gospel? He found one more. Just one more. That's it, just one more. He went and told one more. And had Andrew not told Peter, do you realize we would have a big gap in the Jesus story? Or maybe there's Philip and Nathaniel. Maybe you're like, well, Peter's overplayed in the Bible. Okay, fine. Then there's just Philip and Nathaniel. Philip heard this message that it's the Messiah, and he went and he found Nathaniel, and he said, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Philip goes, this is Jesus. Wow. And he runs and he tells Nathaniel, one more. He just told one more. That was it. He's like, this is so powerful, I got to tell somebody. Has the gospel come into your heart so much that you got to go tell somebody? Like just that one more? Like who's the one more in your life that needs to know Jesus but isn't knowing Jesus because you're holding him too tightly? Jesus is big enough. He's good. He's big enough for you and you're one more. I promise, the more you give him away, the more you have back. Or then there's another one. There's a woman at the well in John chapter 4. Jesus is there and he's talking to this Samaritan woman. He says, hey, ma'am, can you get me something to drink? And she goes, whoa, we're not supposed to be talking. And as they're having this conversation, he tells her all the things in her life. Now the backstory here is she's there gathering water at noon. It's hot. People didn't get water in the middle of the day. They didn't go down to the well in the middle of the afternoon when it's super scorching hot. They went early in the morning. So the fact that she wasn't there early in the morning means she didn't want to be around the women who were there early in the morning because she was tired of being picked on. And so she goes in the middle of the day and she goes to draw her water. And when she's there, she meets this man named Jesus who's a Jewish man and she's a Samaritan woman. Natural born enemies. Hatfields and McCoys all the way. Oh, that was funny. Really? I try my hardest and I throw a one-liner out there and you laugh. Whatever. Okay, so you got this whole Jewish and Samaritan thing going on, and they're not supposed to get along. And Jesus says, "Can you give me a drink?" And she's like, "Dude, you don't get it." And he goes, "Ma'am, do you know who I am? Because I know who you are. Go tell your husband and come back." "Oh, I don't have a husband." "You're right. You're right. You've had a few. And the dude you're living with isn't your husband. But I'm still here." You know what she did? Right there. She left her water jar and she went back to town so she could tell everybody. Like the message of the gospel totally changed her so much that she left her water jar right there and went right back into town where everybody was going to talk about her and everybody was going to make fun of her and everybody was going to look at her cross-eyed and everybody was going to like, "Yo, do you know that woman? She's had like 4 husbands and the guy she's with isn't even her husband." She didn't even care because Jesus looked and said, "I want you to belong to my family even before you believe who I am." See, Jesus was all about sharing his love in his neighborhood. One more. See, when we go through this idea of Jesus, of sharing Jesus' love in our neighborhoods, we oftentimes get so overwhelmed. Well, I can't change the world. There's so many people that don't know Jesus. How am I going to do this? Well, one more. Like literally one. That's it. People say, "Well, I can't change the world." I can't change the world either. I'm never going to go to a stand country. I'm not. I just don't see myself going there. So I can't change all the world. But I can be Philip and tell Nathaniel. Or I can be Andrew and I can tell Peter. I can be the woman at the well and go and tell the people that don't like me how much Jesus welcomed me, even though I kind of stink as a human some days. I can do that. I can do one more. Now, I know, like, I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to watch your reactions, and you're all going to have the same reaction. And even you who force the other reaction, I'll see the real reaction in your eyes. So, like, you know where, like, first service people, you know where I'm going. Who's the last person you shared your faith with? Now, before you actually come up with a name in your head, right? I want you to go back to your moments in high school and in grade school and whatnot. And some of you did exactly what I did when I was in school. I was always taught in school that the first person to make eye contact with the teacher is the one that got called on. And so some of you were like, when I asked the question, "Who's the last person you shared your faith with?" you were like, "Man, I need to polish my shoes. I don't really ever care about polishing my shoes, but today, for some reason, I'm innately drawn to the shine on my shoes." Like, that's where some of you went. But who's the last person you shared your faith with? You're one. Who's your one? Who's your last one more? Now, please understand, I'm not saying you need to draw people into Living Word. That ain't the point. None of this is about Living Word. Our goal in this whole we share Jesus love in our neighborhoods, that is not we share Jesus love in our neighborhoods to get people into Living Word. It's we share Jesus' love in our neighborhood so that we can empty hell today and fill heaven tomorrow. Like, that's our goal. Our goal is to pack heaven. I want it to be standing room only. I mean, look at it this way. Look around you and see an empty chair. You see an empty chair anywhere in the sanctuary near you? That chair represents somebody in your life. That's your one more. Somebody who needs to know Jesus, who just needs an invitation. In the year 2000, a survey was put out that said that if you were asked, if you were asked to come to church, would you? And 82% of people said they would. They redid that survey again, 2018, and it was 81% said they would respond favorably for an invitation to come and worship if someone was going to go with them. So here it is. I'm going to give you three different ways that you can reach your one more. One is you can be that person who prays. You could be the prayer guy. I've done it before at the gym where the people at the gym know that I'm the pastor, and so they don't usually talk to me. And I don't like to talk to people at the gym anyway, so it works out perfect. It's a swimmingly great relationship. Like, when I'm lifting, I can't be talking. And if I can be talking, I'm not lifting enough. So there's that rule that I have. But one day I walked into the gym, and this guy walks up and he goes, "Hey, prayer guy." I'm like, it's a new one. He goes, can you pray for me? I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Can you pray for my wife? She's been diagnosed," and he gave me some details. I'm like, "Oh, dude, can I pray for you now?" He goes, "No, you can do it when you go home." I'm like, "Okay, deal." It's kind of weird, two dudes praying in a gym. It doesn't happen normally. He goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What's your wife's name?" He goes, "You don't need to know. And if your God can fix her pain, he knows her name anyway." Deal? We're good? So I prayed while I was lifting quietly, and I prayed. And that man told me a little bit about what was going on the next time I was there. And it didn't take it away, but he felt some sort of peace on the other side of it. Eventually, she found treatment, and she's fine. So one thing you could do is you can be the prayer guy or gal. You can be the one that people just know prays. And you don't have to be that guy at Applebee's who, when the food comes, gathers his family around and puts his arms on their shoulders like, "Let's pray, everybody," so that the entire restaurant can hear you. Like, I don't expect that. But maybe you can be the prayer guy or the prayer gal who's going to just be the person who's an anchor for somebody else going through struggles. Maybe you can pray for somebody, and your prayer is an invitation to your one more. Another one that you can do is just, you can live a lifestyle built on relationships. See, some people just aren't ready yet. Some people just aren't ready to hear you tell them about Jesus. And so you can live a life that makes somebody ask a question. That's one of my favorite things to do, is live my life in such a way that somebody looks at me and is like, "Dude, what is wrong with you?" And I can be like, "A lot of things. But I think the thing you're getting at is," and I'll tell them. I remember when I was selling cars, and we would have months where we had to meet a quota. If we didn't sell a certain quota, we'd get fired. Like, literally, that was it. You sell 10 cars. If you don't sell 10 cars, you're out on your tuchus. I know that because I was the guy who fired people for not hitting 10 cars. I remember one year, it was February 25th, and you know February only has like 28 days. I had 2 cars on the board, and if I didn't sell 8 cars in 3 days, I was fired. Everybody's panicking, like all of us have no cars on the board. People are freaking out, and I come into work, and I'm just like, "Let's go." People are like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "It's all good. I don't know if I'm going to sell 10 cars this month or not. I have no idea. But I'm going to give it everything I've got, and I'm going to serve God while I'm doing it, and if it's right, He'll guide me in another direction." Now, I will tell you, in 3 days, I sold 15 cars, which is totally not normal. To sell more than 1 car a day is almost impossible. You bought a car recently? You know how many hours it takes to sign all the paperwork and do all the deals? 15 cars in 3 days. And it was by the grace of God that happened. Now, I'm not telling you that if you just do this, it's all going to like rain everything down. It wasn't that great of a month. But sometimes you can just build those relationships and live in a way that makes people ask questions. And I was able to tell people the reason that I'm not totally freaked out is because I have a certainty that's beyond this job. And my certainty beyond this job is that I trust that God's going to provide something. Third one, so maybe you're the prayer guy or you're the prayer gal, and you just pray for people. And your prayer becomes that one more. Maybe it's living in relationship with people so closely that they wonder what the heck's wrong with you. The third one is to invite someone. Have an invitation. Give out an invitation for someone to come and join you in worship. Now there's a difference between an invitation and a non-invitation. A non-invitation is, you should join me in church sometime, maybe, if you want, at a very ambiguous time and location, and you don't even know where I go. Maybe you should do that. That's a non-invitation, because you really don't want them to show up. Because if you did, you'd connect them with the space and the time. An invitation is this: you know what? I found this group of friends that actually are like my family. I was a stranger to this place, and they welcomed me like I belonged there all of my life. And I know that you're going through a lot of stuff, and I would love to have you join me. Church starts at 10:30. I'll be in the parking lot at 10:15. I'll be looking for you. Can I see you there? And I want to go out to lunch with you after service. That's an invitation. And it's just an invitation so that somebody can hear a message and meet other people who believe the same thing you do. It's about one more. We share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are the places where we live, work, and play. Please won't you be my neighbor? Your neighbors are begging you to be their neighbor. They're begging you, by the struggles they face, by the anxiety they deal with, by the pain they carry, they want you to be their neighbor. So won't you please won't you be their neighbor and share Jesus' love with them in real and tangible ways? Maybe it's by praying. Maybe it's by being relationally so close that they ask questions. And maybe it's by simply inviting them so that they might be part of that family of God, once strangers, but now family. We share Jesus' love in our neighborhoods because that's where he sent us, to be bold missionaries for the sake of the gospel. Would you pray with me? Gracious Father, you have called us to be light in the world. And Lord, sometimes we don't shine that light very well. Sometimes the light is very dim at best. Remind us that the power of the light that shines in us is actually your power, that the light that shines through us is actually your light. And so Lord, help us to shine that light into the places where we live, work, and play, in our schools, on the ball fields, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, and even in our own homes. And Lord, right now, I pray that you would lay that one more on our hearts, that one more who needs to know your Son, that one more who needs to know what grace feels like, what the gospel sounds like, that one more who needs to drink of the water of life, and help that one more be the thing that drives us to pray for them, to build relationship with them, and to invite them into a journey where we can learn together all the mercies that come at your feet. One more. Help us to